We will begin with a lesson on sourcing your information. The lesson will begin with an essential question. How does knowing who is behind the information you're consuming affect the way you understand it? Learners will have learning objectives. By the end of the lesson, you will be able to identify strategies for determining who creates information online, define credibility, conflict of interest, and native advertising. And learners will be able to analyze websites and articles that may be intended to deceive. Learners will determine what is credibility. They will then be instructed to read through and navigate through a article that is actually constructed to deceive. They'll answer a question pertaining to the previous article. Then they will have access to a collaborative board where they can share out thoughts and answer questions. Then they'll get an introduction to the lesson. We'll go through a few vocabulary like credibility. Then they'll be answering a question pertaining to their view of what credibility is. Then they will collaborate on and share thoughts on what is credibility of websites and what do they think and what have they already been able to experience with credibility of websites. Then we'll go through a few more vocabulary. Pertaining to the previous source, they will be asked to complete an activity. We will go over what conflict of interest is. Then they'll be able to share out thoughts about encountering conflict of interest in real life. And also they will be preparing to explain their examples of conflict of interest. They will then complete a think, pair, share, answering the question, what might conflict of interest and credibility have to do with each other? Answering how they are related and why it might be worse if a conflict of interest is kept a secret. They will go through a few more content slides. Then they will go back to the previous article on the Northwest tree octopus, and then they will determine if this article is credible or if it also presents a conflict of interest. And they would have to answer why or why not. Then they will go over what are some strategies that they would be able to consider adopting when sourcing an information. Then they will complete a practice. They will be presented with an article and then asked to answer questions. Then they would also go through what is sponsored content, and what is native advertisements. Then they will be presented with what is considered to be a credible source, an article from the New York Times, and then they will be able to go through and analyze the article to look for hints of if this article is credible or not.